Hey everybody, welcome to the Pocket Razors channel. Tonight we're going to sit down and have a little interview with one of our good friends, starting a new segment here on the channel. And we're going to sit down and we are going to have a little one-on-one. And let's bring in our guest now. Let's bring in Mr. Zach Stuff.
Howdy.
Hey, how you doing, Zach? Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
You bet, my man, you bet. Hey, just kind of want to get started here, and anybody that's kind of been tuned into the channel the last few weeks as we got this started off knows that you've obviously been a big help and big part of getting this thing going. And just wanted to get it started off by just saying thank you. Appreciate all your help and friendship and everything doing this. Definitely helped make it a lot easier getting this thing going. I promise you that.
Man, yeah, your stuff's been looking great, man.
Oh,
I
well,
mean,
thank
that's
you
kind
so
of what
much.
our community's about, right? Just people helping people, DSKFS, and it doesn't matter what it is, like I've had, I look back to like when I was trying to get things started, just an interest of, hey, I created my channel, but it was to watch other people's stuff and leave comments. So, when you go back and look at like my channel, it's like, man, that's pretty old. I started it like 4 or 5 years before I started posting videos, and so I think back to that, and I'm like, there were some cool people I reached out to that were very welcoming in this community that I was like pretty kind of shell shocked that they would actually even respond on an email.
Right.
So, and especially just becoming, friends with you and other people in this community, and then being able to just hang out and meet people. It just kind of creates that like super connection as well. And so it's kind of awesome. I just like it.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously, kind of leading up to this, you and I had some pretty good conversations here. Well, I guess probably what did we start about a month and a half, 2 months before it actually kind of got it launched off of there. And I definitely threw you a lot of thoughts and just kind of shotgunned a whole bunch of ideas to you and kind of ran through them. And a couple of things that came out of there is and early on, I think probably like a lot of it, just even in the discussions, my biggest fear was whether or not there'd be enough content, And then
Right.
I'll tell you, one of the most reassuring things is, as you and I kind of had I remember the one conversation we had the one night. We talked, gosh, 2 or 3 hours that night, and was kind of just running ideas and stuff, and you're feeding back, and just your experience was able to kind of set me at ease. It was like content wasn't the problem. It was like
Hmm.
I was fortunate enough that because of the concepts that I wanted to do with the channel, that there was going to be built-in content. And my biggest challenge was going to be time and and
Yeah.
and creating the content based off of all the different stuff and whatnot. And I think that probably most creators and stuff that jump into this would probably struggle with just having enough time in their lives to break away and do it the way that they want to. So.
Well, and that always comes down to, what you can consume, you
Mm-hmm.
know, as well as what you can put out there. I mean, I find my stuff kind of sometimes every once in a while I'll get something in, and unless it's like pressing for a date that if maybe Benchmade has something coming out, or I purchased something new from Spyderco from Cutlery Shop, and it comes in and I want to get it on camera the first day I get it. I'll find myself like, oh, I need to go in and make that video, and then all of a sudden I click on the computer, and oh, hey, Big Red's on, or
Yeah.
somebody else in the community's on, and it's like, oh, well, I want to watch that, and we got people that are going live all the time now, so you can almost consume that content whenever you open your computer, and so that's kind of cool. I mean, you got to admit, like, I know I follow the knife tube schedule.
Uh-huh.
I always check that out because it's always changing as well, you know.
Oh man, yeah. Speaking of that, I mean, from when he first started that, and I think I was actually in the community. That hasn't been going all that long. I don't think a couple of years. And I think
Yeah,
that was
Scott
rough.
N.
Mm-hmm. Yep, Scott N.
Mm-hmm.
And shout out to Scott N. You do a great job, man. Thank you. Can't speak for everybody, but there's a couple of guys here that really like your stuff. But no, that was pretty cool watching that. And I remember going in there the first few times I went in, and I was still kind of really young into to getting involved into the online conversation then. and it was kind of it was a little blank. There were blank days, and you go look at it now, and boy, just in those past couple of years or three or whatever it's been that he started that, man, that thing is packed almost every day. I mean, each calendar date, you almost have to pop out anywhere between a half a dozen to 18 more on certain days where there's so
Yeah.
much stuff that it just fills those calendar pages. So,
I wonder,
um,
I'll have to reach out to him. Maybe he's got some of those, first month or two, where he's actually collected everything that's out there
yeah,
and, see how it's filled. Like, I know when I looked at things, I was like, I really wanted to, I was having to research everything myself.
yeah,
I was having to go out, literally pull up, see because I was like, man, it would be great because there's a lot of people on like a Friday afternoon, Friday evening, Saturday afternoon, Saturday evening. But there was always people, jumping in doing live stream stuff, and I'm like, I don't want to step on any toes, and so I'm like, well, I'll try it on Sunday, at noon Pacific, and I'm like, I'll try that because that kind of works for me, make it happen, and it's just stuck now.
right,
So, would I rather be on a different night? Possibly, because it doesn't. It's a conflict of like you're running against football, basketball,
right,
sports, racing, tennis, family events, church.
yeah,
Like you're like up against some of the big stuff, and so I think like we draw a great crowd every live stream, and I think that's the only thing where I'm like, and I think I talked to you earlier about it too. I've made the choice to not do like a face forward interview style
right.
for my live streams and stuff. And so I think that's one of the things that I miss. I really miss a connection with people on. And so I'm looking at changing that on my channel here soon, which, I think would be a positive for the best for everybody because anytime I go on somebody's live stream or show up on your stuff or anything, people are always, hey man, it's great to see you on there and
Yeah,
want to have the channel, so
yeah. I mean, then that's one of the things you and I actually talked about it, and one of the primary things for me is, and it was a personal goal more than anything, was, and after having researched how a lot of channels started, I noticed that a lot of channels that do eventually get in front of the camera, whether it's live or just do kind of talking head instead of just having pointed down to a table cam or something like that, it usually takes them a while. And as you know from some of our conversations, part of my motivation, for other reasons, was I needed to get comfortable in front of the camera, and it
right.
had always I'd always had issues with that throughout most of my pretty much all of my adult life. But and I'll tell you what, working through that and coming out, and it was just like, just getting myself out there. Not only was it rewarding, and I'm glad I did it and kind of got it out of the way. I think it's, I still make a lot of mistakes and whatnot like that, but I think it's helping to get comfortable. And I can tell you that the community, just in the past few weeks, has been so supportive of it. There's been
Yeah.
no negatives, and matter of fact, there's been a fair amount of people that have sent, messages, one way or another, that, have just been like, "Wow, great for putting yourself out there." I mean, internally,
Hmm.
whether or not it's a big deal or it's not a big deal, for, personally. But when people start to pick up on it and share some of their same reservations, that's pretty cool. But that's the beautiful thing about our community, and we'll probably get into that here in a little bit later. But obviously, talking it through, one of the ideas, one of the things that I'd enjoyed about the community were these conversations, and like so many people, that have gravitated to the community, it seems like, a lot of people come for the content. They come for the knife. They come for the tool, the gear, whatever it is that they're researching. I was no different. I literally just started searching YouTube to find a couple of new modern folders which weren't in my wheelhouse, and I was trying to get out of, the old little slip joints that I'd been carrying after seeing one of my guys at the store, one of his knives that he'd had. And I mean, I've told you a number of times, man, I came for the knife and I stayed for the conversation, you know,
Yeah.
and that conversation, whether it was a knife world or really anywhere. I mean, I didn't do lives. I didn't get in live streams. I mean, I didn't. I would respond to videos, comments and videos and stuff like that. but I was not at all part of the conversation for several 2 3 years when I got here. And you know, I discovered, you know, the lives. I'd been following your channel largely because, you know, I started researching Benchmades, and then you took knives apart, and I'd already
Mm-hmm.
found Nick Shabazz at that time, and just loved his stuff because he liked to take them apart. I mean, who takes apart a perfectly good knife for no other reason than just to take it apart? You know, there
Right.
was Nick Shabazz, definitely that I'm that kind of human, have been my whole life, and then found you, and you know, like I said, I was just literally checking out one of your videos one day. It was right around Christmas, and you guys were doing that Knife Rights live marathon, and
Mm-hmm.
I think I was in there going to look for a video or something like that, that I catching up on some of your stuff, and I saw that you guys were live, and I just clicked into it, and that was a little over 2 years ago, 2 years, 3 4 months, something like that, I think, right around in there, and that's what got me into the community, you know, and as we kind of talked out the channel and stuff like that, you know, working through the fear of getting in front of the camera, but more importantly, wanting to get engaged in the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, most of it's always been on a cell phone or something like that. It's been hard to really engage a whole lot in the chat. And
Yeah.
you know, finally got a keyboard at the ready to get in there now, and it's a lot easier to engage in the chats now. But man, I understand why you guys like doing these lives. I mean, it was just I was on such a high after doing that first live. I mean, I don't think I went to sleep till 4 o'clock the next morning. You know,
No, that's
I
awesome.
think we got done about 9:30 or something on that first one. You
Mm-hmm.
know, so but you know, and that's why I'm here, and we were talking it out. And one of the things I wanted to do is I've had this, as I shared with you originally. I have a feeling there's a lot of people. I'm going to say like me, but probably like us, out there, especially, you know, through the kind of the COVID era, that probably gravitated, and I wasn't here before it, but it seems like there was definitely an explosion that happened, probably just in YouTube and content in general, but the knife community especially. Um, and I know for me, you can go back and you can rewatch old videos, but once you get involved in the conversation and stuff like that, there's so many good stories, and there's so, you know, I'm a sponge. I love to learn anyways. I love history and all. I just love other people's stories and learn about them, and that's kind of what I wanted this series to be about. And I felt it was really appropriate to try to kick it off with you, and kind of being the first guest here, and to get that conversation at this level started, kind of more on that interview, one-on-one, kind of a podcast style, whatever. Um, you know, because you helped me talk it through, you know, and you know, for me, whether it's creators, whether it's manufacturers, whether it's other people in the community, I'd love to get caught up, and that's kind of what I was hoping to do tonight. Was you know, you and I have gotten to be friends, you know, over the past few years as well. I've got a lot of the backstory, but I think that there's probably a lot of people, and I think it's hard trying to watch content and and not miss stuff, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so that's kind of my general thought, especially what I'd like to try to do tonight, and hopefully moving forward, is you know, kind of give you a chance, kind of do a little bit of interview on you here, and you know, just figure out who is Zach stuff. I mean, who is Zach? How does Zach stuff come to be? You know, and let's go back to the beginning. You know, how long, you know, have knives and or EDC related stuff been a part of your life? I mean, did you just, you kind of evolved and you didn't realize that it was a thing? Did you just carry a knife? Did you end up expanding into the EDC thought process after you discovered one, or was it just kind of always in your life and you're always aware of it? But I'd love to know how knives and EDC came into your life even before the Zach Stuff channel was even probably even a thought. So
Well, it depends on how far you want to go back.
you take us back as far as you want to go, my man.
So, one of the things for me is like we have, growing up as a youth, active in Boy Scouts, camping, fishing, most weekends with my family. So there's always a need to have some sort of knife around,
Mm-hmm.
whether it was something to clean the fish with. So we had some, fish cutting fillet type knives or whatever that we would carry on the boat. But overall, like you're still looking to like, okay, I need to cut my fishing line. I need to, one of your lures is messed up, so you're trying to fix that. All the, you get one that maybe you mistie and you got to retie it, and it's like a problem. Or you're doing a different style fishing. You're fishing for salmon or fishing for steelhead, and it's like, okay, so you're getting a different pole. You're trolling, doing different things. So those kind of things for me, like I always carried like a Swiss Army knife.
Uh-huh.
Carried one of those. Actually, one of my first real like gotcha kind of moments was with a Swiss Army knife, and filleted my thumb meat open,
Ouch.
on my hand pretty bad. And that was post. I'd already had my what did they call it? Like it was some sort of, it might even be a bad word now, I don't know, but it was like I think the Boy Scouts, like it was like a knife safety card. But I think they called it like a knife chit or knife and chit or something. I don't know. I'll
Oh
have to do
yeah,
some
what's
research
that?
on that, but
Yeah, I think I
it,
kind of remember what you're talking about. Yeah.
yeah. And so it was like post that safety thing where you
Mm-hmm.
got that and you're feeling all confident, and then you cut yourself and you're like, gosh, I'm pretty stupid, but you're a kid, so you're learning. And then jumping into just, high school, college, those kind of things. Obviously, they weren't a big fan of you carrying stuff at school. So it was, weekend stuff still. Growing up pretty much on the water a lot through the summers. We had a cabin and stuff in the families, a couple cabins where we would take boats up there every weekend. So we're fishing, doing things like that all the time. And so having something to carry and cut with was important. At the same time, you get through like college and those kind of things, you're working and you're like always needing to cut something, like, oh, I need to cut this, I need to cut that. So I kind of researched and went into like a smaller Swiss Army knife. So one that was a little easier to pocket, maybe it had scissors on it, those kind of things. And then I got into kind of some more, you're very familiar with this, but getting into some like installation type things. So
Mm-hmm.
worked for some dealerships where, people would purchase a vehicle and want to upgrade stuff.
Right.
So like I want to add this, I want to add that. Whether it was interior or exterior type stuff, you're finding yourself needing to carry something to cut with. So, tried out a couple different things, ended up with like a CRKT M16 pocket knife, and also a pretty rad Smith and Wesson SWAT knife, and I've shown that several times
Mm-hmm.
on my channel as just kind of a throwback, and people still use those today. I've seen several TV shows where people are using tools and knives and things in their daily tasks, and they're still breaking out a Smith and Wesson or a Gerber, Kershaw, Benchmade, whatever. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, okay. And so that kind of kicked off like the need to carry something all the time for work. And so as I got into work, I was like, okay, I need to carry something, you know. So the CRKT was actually a pretty popular one for me, and so was the Smith and Wesson one. And I actually came to a point where I was like, I didn't know how to sharpen a knife, and a friend of mine was like, "Hey, there's this guy in town over here. You can go see him. It's a few miles away, but you can go visit him. And he's an edge master, and he sharpens knives and does all this stuff. And as we know him today, it's Tom Veff. So I got to know him, a couple decades ago, and he was kind of the same way then as he is now. Like you take in a Smith and Wesson, and he's like, you're not going to be happy overall with it, but I'll put a good edge on it. It's
Right.
not going to last. And, at the time I didn't understand, because I was like, I was super young, and I'm like, well, why wouldn't it, hold a good edge? And he's just like, the steel is not very good. You need to find a
Mm-hmm.
better steel for this. And I'm like, and I had zero clue of what a better steel would be for a pocket knife at that time.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of took that in. I was like, okay, that's fine. But I continued using it, and I would bring it back and have him sharpen it. And good conversation overall, but I wouldn't even say I touched any layer of the knife community at all, other than like that little tiny speck of conversation and meeting Tom, because I didn't even know who Tom was. He
Right.
was, a local guy who had his own sharpening business. And so, schedule a time to go, meet at his shop and drop off a couple knives, get them sharpened while you wait, kind of thing, and kind of
Yeah.
move on from there. What
Basically,
really,
you had your tools, and you didn't have
yep,
the knowledge or experience to basically bring them back to where they were functional. You were just a customer going into a store, and
mm-hmm,
just part of your daily life, even though it wasn't really
yeah,
kind of a
and
passion or anything, so to speak. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're using your daily tools, and I had a couple knives, and like I said, you would see the sharpening, like the pull through sharpeners, you would see them at the
Right.
store, hanging up on the wall, sporting good places and all that. I don't know, Pacific Northwest people that are watching this, GI Joes, that
Right.
was a place we had out here, before all the big box places, but was kind of the staple where you could get a set of brake pads. You could buy a sweatshirt. You could get something for your boat. You could get concert tickets and a pair of shoes. Like you could kind of get
Right. Right.
everything, groceries there. So
Yeah, that was
it
what
was kind of
Ticketmaster inside of the sporting goods
yeah,
store. Wasn't that
yeah.
called Ticketmaster? I think that
It
what
was,
they
it
had.
was,
Yeah.
yeah. So, but they also did like fishing licenses and hunting licenses, so they covered everything.
Right.
But you had to, this is the pre-computer era.
Right.
It kind of dates me, so don't put a
Yeah. Yeah.
age on me yet. But it's one of those where we all lived through that, and
Right.
so that was where I was really like, okay, I got these couple knives and I'm happy with them. I don't have to have a whole lot of knives and rotate through stuff. And there was nothing where it was like, oh, this is fantastic. And then a buddy of mine, he started up an online business where he was selling a kind of a variety of, like, now that we would look at it, everyday carry items. But he was selling, some backpacks and some other types of packs, and he was selling some outdoor gear, and he was selling, CRKT knives and a few different models from different companies. Obviously, wasn't selling Benchmade because he didn't have a storefront, but I didn't know that at the time. And so all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, you got CRKT you're selling? I want to buy one of those. I have one. It was kind of that brand recognition. And hey, this is a new model they came out with. And I'm like, oh, this is kind of a neat thing. And so I really saw the, like, I guess, dealer side of things.
Right.
So I'm like, oh, there's a different price. Like, the dealers pay this much from the company, and then they sell it for this much plus shipping online. I was
Yeah.
like, this is kind of interesting.
Right. Right. Yeah.
And so that kind of led me to, like, look at other models. And I'm like, okay, so I picked up a different CRKT, was carrying one of those. And, but at the time, like, I'm still finishing up school, still working, full time, then part time. Had 2 or 3 jobs at a time. And I'm like, okay, we got to make something work. Well, I was volunteering for an event, and it was a fundraiser event. Basically, we had a pretty tragic situation in our community where one of the sergeants for our sheriff's office, in our community, he basically was, I try to remember the whole story, but the gist of it was he basically was shot in the face, and pretty tragic overall. There were some really, you look at it now and you're like, there's obviously some people watching over him because the things that were in place saved his life. And, took somebody who was married, kids, those kind of things. And now, he's not going to be able to function in life without assistance for the rest of his life. And so it hit the whole community hard here in the Portland metro area. And so there was a fundraiser at one of the schools. And so we were just there helping out, and they did a fundraiser where, like a kind of a raffle when you get there. They had
Right.
a bunch of, like, things that you could do silent auction stuff on, but there was also just a raffle. Pay $1 a ticket or $2 a ticket, whatever. So put in on a couple tickets and was doing my thing, and I ended up winning a knife from this raffle. And I'm like, okay, that's cool, right? You're donating money, you're helping out. You win something that was donated. I had no idea what it was. You know, I got home, opened it up. You know, I'm like, okay, what is? There's a butterfly on the box. You know, this is where it's going. That's where it's
Right,
going.
right, right,
And
right.
I'm like, okay, there's butterfly on the box. Like, what is this knife? And I'm looking
Well,
at the sticker.
I don't want to interrupt, but this is and you'll understand. You'll appreciate it. Butterfly with or without antennae.
This one I think had it. It did have the
Right
antennae
on,
back then.
right on.
And
Okay,
so, I mean,
right,
that's on my list right here. That's on my list.
right, right,
Uh,
right.
bring back the antennas on the butterflies.
There you go.
But yes, definitely had one of the butterfly logos with the antenna.
Yep.
And I was looking at it, and I'm like, okay, it's a little blue box, and you know, slides open. I'm looking at the sticker on it, and it says like first production run. I'm like, okay, first production run. That's pretty cool. And it said 8 of 1,000. And I was like, okay, so it's, you know, a pretty low number out of this, you know, 1,000 pieces that were made. I'm like, that's pretty cool. So I started carrying it, and man, just what a useful knife it was. And this one was partially serrated, um, you know, and it took a patina really well, based on the scales, the handles that are on it, and I just started using it. And then basically, I found out reading the paperwork that like, hey, this is free sharpening for life, and I'm like, my goodness, like I got this knife on a raffle. It comes with free sharpening from the business. So I found out where this business was. I'm like, they're not super far away, you know, they're here in the metro area. Like, you know, I'll find a time to go there if I ever need to sharpen it. And, you know, that time finally came and went and sharpened it. And, anyways, kept using it. It was my literally daily carry. Never really carried the Smith and Wesson at all again. Didn't really carry the CRKT again. This one was on it. This is like the knife that, you know, was just so useful. And so I'm like, okay, so that's what it was. Well, after sharpening it with them many times, someone at the factory was like, hey, do you know what knife you have here? And I'm like, this is a Benchmade. It's a first production, you know, 8 of 1,000. You know, I
Right.
really love it. Got the serrations, blah, blah, blah. Well, during that sharpening, and that was probably like I don't know, 10th time, 12th time I'd taken it in there. The blade had been eating it up, you know. Obviously the steel as you go
Right.
on, you know, steel goes down. But it was due for a blade replacement. And so they were like, here's the deal. They're like, we understand from talking with you, you love this knife. You probably need to find a different one and maybe just put this one aside. Because even though we do blade replacements, and back then they were super cheap, which was awesome, they were like, you don't want to do a blade replacement because this one's laser marked 8 of 1,000 first production run. And it was on a Benchmade 940, the original with the green aluminum scales. And of course, I'd used it every day for
Right.
years, and it was just terrific. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know that's a thing, you know. And they said, yeah, that's a thing. Like they're like, if you find another one that's used somewhere, or a friend has it, like, and it needs another blade, bring it in, you know, $25 or whatever. We'll put a new blade on it. We'll tune it up, you know. And now that we know like a whole knife spa thing from them and new springs, whatever it needs, right? And I'm like, okay. So I start to like go home and do some research, and I'm like, what are they talking about? Like this is something I need to just put away, you know? And I don't know what I stumbled upon, but I started reading some articles, and it was like talking about how these knives, and you know, I wish my eyes would have been open because there was a whole mess of 940 stuff being sold at the time,
Right.
and I didn't even realize it. Now today, being a super fan of the 940, I'm like, gosh, I wish I would have just had a broader, you know, perspective or more resources to tap into back then, because there wasn't YouTube, you know, there wasn't all these blade forums and things online, and the internet stuff was kicking off, but it was like, you know, you're not going to go looking for these things. So anyways, fast forward, found one that was posted on the line. I like to say that's pretty funny,
I like
but it was posted online,
that.
and it was like, you know, it's an hour north of Portland, and I'm like, that's a long trip, but I love a deal. I'm like, they only wanted like $80 for it, and a brand new one was like, I don't know, 140 or something. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll take the trip. So I go up there, and it's a different model, but it had a knife blade, like, your typical 940, blade style. You got that beautiful reverse tonneau, but the tip was broken off, and it looked like they had like used it to pound through maybe some, super thick electrical cable, or I don't know.
They were batoning steel with
Wire.
it or something.
Yeah, they were like chopping wire with it or something with a mallet. So I'm like, that's what it looked like. So I'm like, well, let's go see how good this, blade swap is, and, Life Sharp warranty that they claim. So I went up there, turned it in, and basically got a brand new knife. Like, they didn't give me a new knife, but they just rebuilt it.
Right.
I think it was like $25 or something. It was new blade, which I wish that was still the price, but they were like, new blade, nice, beautiful new blade, new springs. They made sure everything was good. They put a new clip on it. And all of that was one price. And I'm like, what is going on here? Like, I need to be a part of this, What is this Butterfly Benchmade company that we've tapped into here? So started using that one, put the other one away, and basically they told me, like, if you ever want to sell that first production one, come back here. There's people here that'll buy it from you. And that really kicked off in my brain, and I'm like, dude, there's something going on here. Like, there's this underground knife community that I don't know about, but I'm hearing a little bit about it. Like, that has a value to it. Right. Even in its used state, it has a, like, value. And I'm like, this is weird. Like, in my mind, it made me think of, like, is this like a 65 Mustang or something, or a Camaro, or like, why is there this value to this 940 that's, been sharpened so much? And so anyway, so I started carrying that other 940, and then that kind of kicked off to, like, what else does this Butterfly company offer? And so I'm seeing, like, the traditional Butterfly knives, the Bally Songs, and I'm like, I tried one, and it was terrible. I couldn't operate it. I'm not a Bally flipper guy. That's just not me. And so I was like, well, they have this other one called a Griptilion or something. And I'm like, what is this Griptilion or whatever? And I'm like, so then they correct me. They're like, it's a Griptilion, and here's what it is. And they had a few models, and I'm like, okay. So I saved up and purchased a brand new one from them, and I'm like, this is pretty cool. And then got into, finding some other ones online, and people were cutting them loose for really cheap. And they were doing that because the blades were a little messed up. And I was like, well, I know a place that's local, the mothership of the Butterfly, that I can take it to, and for, $30 or less, have a brand new blade and pretty much a brand new knife. So I kind of started just doing some, like, used knife collecting that way. There wasn't the, counterfeit market as there is today. So you didn't really have to worry about that, back then. And so now it's like, I'm like, man, so all of a sudden I have a Griptilion and a mini Griptilion, and, I found another 940 local that somebody was getting rid of. And I'm like, so trying to find those deals, because I just couldn't afford, a brand new Benchmade knife unless I really, really saved a lot for it. Right. And one of the jobs I had, you were tipped out every day. And so I was really focused on that. And I'm like, I want to buy a new knife from Benchmade. And my buddy who was selling things online, he's like, man, there's these Kershaws I'm selling, and these Gerbers, and blah, blah. And I'm like, well, let me come over and try them. Nothing felt right that I would try from those companies. Oh, even got a new CRKT model. Didn't feel right. I always went back to my 940 or my Griptilion. And so that's been, 2 decades worth of carrying those knives. And now we're looking at just the amazing amount of models that have been released over those 2 decades. And it's like, wow. So that kind of transitioned, when I started doing some used collecting. And then I started really getting into kind of finding a product that they put into their production line. And I still didn't tap into this, like, collector portion. Like, there was a whole, like we know now, there's people like and I'm very blessed for the knives that I have and I've been able to purchase in my life. And there's people like, I love the 940, but I don't have like, I've helped build this awesome list. And I only say help because I helped with like the last 5 years, but there's people that have built this list from the beginning of every 940 model that's ever been released. And I'm telling you, there is so many of them. They did 50 run models, 25 run models, 150, 250, 500, 1,000. There's all these different types that date all the way back to the origin of the 940. And so I was like, I didn't even know about that then. So then I started getting into this where I was like picking up a few other types of knives. A friend of mine got a Spyderco, and I was like, I want to check one of those out. So picked up a Spyderco, and I was like, that's not too bad, but it's got this funky hole, this big bump on the blade. It like carries upside down in comparing to my Benchmade, like the knife blade did. And I'm like, this is weird. So I did a little research on those and was like, oh, there's one where you can actually move the pocket clip. Okay, great. I'll get one of those instead because I like carrying it tip up. And so anyway, so then I was like, okay, so the years keep going by. It sounds like I date myself, but it's just weird how it goes. And then all of a sudden I was like, all right, what else is going on with, the knives? And I found one I really, really wanted from Benchmade. So I started saving up for it. And then I purchased that, but I still didn't have this connection with this, collecting community. I didn't even know stuff was out there because stuff online started popping up, different blade forums. I still had no idea this was all going on.
Yeah. So is it safe to say at that point that you're just kind of still just kind of collecting or purchasing knives because your interest is just kind of growing a little bit, and you're not really thinking? Were you thinking of actually starting a collection at that point, or you were just mostly just kind of consuming? I mean, just picking it up because, oh, that one's cool, and you kind of like that a little bit, or
yeah.
So a little bit more intentional with it at that point.
Yeah. So as you visited the Benchmade factory store.
Yeah.
And maybe a couple times. And the nice
once
part.
Once or twice.
yeah. We only talk about one or
right.
two. Yeah. But the nice part is you can actually go in, get hands on. Whereas a lot of times in stores things are boxed up. The weird part is like here in the Portland metro area, we don't have a lot of knife stores, which
is really strange.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of the big manufacturers here.
Right.
But like you can't go into Kershaw, you can't go into Gerber, you can't go into CRKT and get hands on with their knives. And Benchmade's been the only one where you can physically go in and be like, hey, you got this new knife out. Oh yeah, here you go. Put it in your hand. You can try it and, test it out, how it rides in your pocket, how it operates. And you're like, oh yeah, I want this one. And then if you have the money, you buy it then. If not, hey, I'm going to save for that one, Perfect. But what really turned me on to Benchmade was I had started, I wouldn't say collecting, but like I found the Griptilian I liked, right? Then there was a different model that all of a sudden I was seeing, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Had no clue that like they put out a yearly catalog, like, that like I was just focused on work and that's it. And every once in a while you're like, oh, this is a cool one. I want to go get that, So you save up for it, you end up going to get it. Well, they did a cool thing where you could win a knife from Benchmade. Local business had a thing. Benchmade was there. Hey, put your name in the bucket here. You could win a knife, All right. So put my name in the bucket. Didn't think much about it. Like a week later, I get a phone call. Hey, this is so-and-so from Benchmade. Congratulations, you won this thing. You can come in, pick out a knife, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, this is pretty cool. That really kicked off, like, there's a whole, and because they had a social media manager, and it really kicked off a conversation where they're like, oh, we have this online Benchmade forum that we host, and there's also the, blade forums, and there's also this, and da, da, da. And so they're in communication with all these and this and that. And I'm like, just overload. I'm like, what is going on? I'm like, okay, I need to check this stuff out now. So then I
Right.
really get into the like blade forums and those kind of things. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is overload, because there's people selling knives for every manufacturer all over the place, you know?
Right.
And then really nerded out over like the specific Benchmade ones, and then really opened my eyes up to like, hey, there's this 940 that you really like. You have a green aluminum and a black aluminum one, and now they got this G10 model. You're really gonna like a lot of what is out there. And then I'm seeing these knives being sold, and I'm like, man, I didn't even know that was for sale. So then it kind of kicked off the whole like, okay, I want to go back and collect some of these. And then what really kicked me onto the whole YouTube and finding the knife community was similar to you. I was looking for how to take apart a knife. And I was like searching on Google, and you know, there was a couple like forum articles that popped up, and it was like, okay, do this, do that. And I'm like, that's good, but I like to watch somebody do it. One of the knife videos that popped up was from this guy named Nick Shabazz or something, and I'm like, who's this? And I'm like,
Right.
and as we know, of course, it's Nick Shabazz. You know,
Yeah.
hey everybody, Nick here. You know, and like, I'm like, well, this guy sounds fun. You know, and so I'm watching him do it, and so then I literally saved that video. But I wanted to leave a comment to say, hey, thank you so much for doing this tear apart, because it helped me with this project I wanted to do.
Right.
And you couldn't leave a comment without creating like an online channel, so to speak. And I think it's still the same way to this day. And I was like, okay, well, let's create a channel and be like, they're like, what do you want your name to be? And I'm like, I don't know, Zach. And Zach was taken. So I'm like, I don't know, Zach stuff, you know, like whatever. So I put that on there, and that was just to leave people comments and other stuff. And so that really kicked off like watching those videos. And then literally I had signed up to subscribe to his channel. And then all of a sudden I got a notification thing one time, and it was like, same thing. He was live. And I'm like, what is this live thing? But he was tearing apart a knife. And I'm like, okay, so I'm in. Let's watch it. And then
Right.
there's all these people commenting. And then he used to do a pretty regular live stream. And this is, you know, a number of years ago. And I was like, well, I got to make sure I'm available. You know, I got to put this on my own calendar,
Right.
because this is kind of cool. And there's some people that you start talking with in there, and it's like, oh, okay, there's some people I want to talk with, and you get to know through that. And literally just the community just welcomed you know, me in, was like, Zach, I don't know what your stuff is, but welcome in, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, hey, thanks. And, you know, then finding other channels through that, because people are like, oh, did you see what happened on such and such's video, this other knife he got? And I'm like, there's other knife people out there? Like, what the heck, you know? And so then I'm like, well, maybe I really need to look at like what I'm doing with mine.
Right.
And so of course you're seeing other people buy something. You know, there's sometimes, there's some promotion stuff even back then. You know, it's pushing the FOMO, you know, the fear of missing out. And you're like, gosh, I really want to get that, and that's coming up like in a week. That knife's going to drop, and they sent one to Nick to show all of us, and I think that's pretty cool. So I think I'm going to try to buy that, you know?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, okay. You end up getting one, and you feel more part of the community, because you're like, man, I got that same knife, you know? It's like, I got this new bug out that came out, you know? And like, oh, this is great. And, you know, so overall, like, the community's been awesome. And then literally, my wife was like, at a moment, because I was watching these live streams, obviously around her and other people, because they were happening, like, you know, we're doing a family barbecue, and I'm like, you know, got my phone watching this, you know, this live stream thing, and like Nick or somebody else, and like, oh my gosh. And so she was finally like, well, you really like that, like, you have a lot of knives, maybe you should just do videos on your own stuff too, you know? And I was like, that's a good point.
Yeah.
And you know, I really took that for thought, because I was like, man, I don't know what I would say. I'm not polished like these guys are. I don't have a cool voice like Nick, you know, none of that stuff. I don't wear Batman masks. Like, there's nothing that I can do that's people are going to go, oh, I want to follow that channel.
Right.
And so when I started my channel, like, it's not how it is today. And I think you bring up a valid point earlier of, you know, the boom of not only the knife community, but the whole like online community for whatever topic you're looking for really
Yeah.
boomed during the pandemic. Not that people were working from home on their computers and had extra time on their hands.
Well, no, they're working hard, right? 100%.
But that was one of the things where I think that, you know, I had started my channel prior to that, and it was really hard when I started to get people to subscribe to your channel. There was a big range between new channels and existing channels. And there was not a lot of people who, you know, wanted to take the time to share. I guess that's a good way to describe it. But then there was quite a few that were willing to take the time to share. But you could tell, like, I mean, I'm a person where I don't want to be that person where I'm like constantly like, hey, can you hold my hand and walk me through this whole thing?
When in the back of your mind, you're hoping it's like, will you please take my hand and walk me through the whole thing?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like right now, like there's so many people, like when you start a channel, there's so many people who, you know, you can go to school for this now. You know, you can go to school for marketing and advertising that really incorporates everything you're going to do on social media. And it doesn't matter if it's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, wherever. And so I was really blessed because there were some good people who took a little bit of time to talk to me about stuff. Nick was one of them. Slicey Dicey, if you remember Slicey Dicey, he took some time to walk through some stuff with me. And, you know, there was a couple others. And so, you know, Metal Complex is one as well. He kind of started up, I think right after me, but he had a good foundation of like the marketing side of thing. And so I had talked to him about a lot of stuff as well. And I didn't have the time to dedicate to just go 100% gangbusters into my channel. And so I had a really good collection of knives. I know we were talking about earlier some of my first videos, and you know, that's kind of around the time like 2018, you know, mid or fall 2018 is when I kind of started up my channel. And you know, I had some of that, like that Smoky Mountain Knife Works, you know, 940 exclusive they had,
right?
You know, red resin carbon fiber, you know, and some of these exclusives that Benchmade came out with, and I was collecting them, you know. And I mean, I was carrying them too, but like some of those 940s from that point forward, like I would try to save up the money and buy 2 of them. And the goal was to carry one and use it and then put one away, because I wanted to have a cool 940 collection.
Right.
And I really tried to do that still to this day when they came out with them. It was hard there for like a year and a half, 2 years, because there was a bunch of 940 exclusives, and I had to go backwards to get a few of them. You know, like Knifeworks had a really cool black and blue G10 one, and I'm like, gotta get a couple of those. And it was like, I found one, you know, because they had already been sold out by the time I got into it, and I found one online on a auction site and picked up one of those for a reasonable price for a used one. And then they did another run through Knifeworks of them. Mm-hmm. You know, there was such popularity that Benchmade's like, yep, we'll let you do another run. And I was like, I got to get a new one, you know, I got to put it in the collection of 940s. So that's been kind of cool. That kind of brings us to current day with the channel. You know, the community's been amazingly supportive, you know, and I've just tried to give back as much as I can, you know. Yeah. And I know there's a wide variety of people who, you know, don't do giveaway stuff, and it's not that we need to and are required to at all. There's a lot of people that don't do any giveaways, or maybe just do them for big, you know, milestones. Hey, I reached 10,000 subscribers. Hey, I reached 5,000 subscribers, those kind of things. I try to do, because there's definitely communities that support my channel, companies that support my channel along with the community, but they'll send me a knife and say, hey, why don't you just put this out on your channel? and I'll try to use that as a giveaway thing, and then I'll get other things myself, through the support I've received on my channel, through my channel members, and that support on a monthly basis, and I'm able to, after YouTube's cut, put that to use, and then be mindful of my taxes. I learned that the first 2 years. I was like, what? I gotta pay taxes on this stuff? I'm like, I thought this was just free money that came in.
Oops.
Yeah, oops. So that's one of the things where, you then all of a sudden it's like, ooh, I got to start running this as a business. So I need to sit down with, my financial advisor and my tax guy and be like, okay, what's the best way for me to run this? What's the best way for me to spend money back into the channel? So not only, because I don't want to, you're going to pay taxes on pretty much everything that you're getting. And so being able to, just be mindful of, setting some stuff aside. And I can tell you every year that I've ran my channel since I started posting videos, I have put more money into the channel than I've received. So that's how it is. I'm not doing it full time. And so I know, like, if I did it full time, I'd probably have a lot more content, and then more content equals more views, more ad revenue, more support, from companies, those kind of things. So I get it. It's kind of that double-edged sword. Like, I got to still work, 50 hours a week, and at the same time be like, hey, how much can I put into my channel? So I've been kind of, the last 2 years, I've been looking at that pretty serious. And, what's kept me going is the community, because, it kind of hammers you down a bit. You're like, man, I've spent the last 2 years dumping a lot of money into the channel because, even the swag, I mean, I love the DSKFS,
Yeah.
but, these patches cost,
They
the
do. They
stickers
don't come
cost
free.
know that. Yeah. I mean, business wise.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
but I'm also not in it to make money. That's not my priority. So, my thing is, like, the support is awesome because I use all of it, and then I put my own money into it as well. So
Yeah,
my,
absolutely.
my financial advisor gave me some good options, and like, hey, you can do things for the right way. And if you want to continue to support it yourself, keep going,
Yeah.
but basically the biggest thing was, like, if you want to, make it a job, you got to put the effort into it like a job. So you need to put that time into it and, spend 30-40 hours a week getting the content out there, getting the marketing, getting the, relationships out there. And so that's kind of been the, like, thought the last couple of years. Like, I'm not going to quit my full-time work to go do that, but I want to try to ratchet up what I'm doing, get more content out there, have more fun. And the fun part's what I'm looking at right now.
Cool.
So there'll be some more fun stuff coming up this year, which is good. And I got a couple things to kind of blow people's mind a little bit, which will be good.
You gonna share any little tips or hints of what some of the goals or what some of that blow our minds might be, or a little bit too early to speak to that?
There'll be a lot more, like, behind the curtain, or I guess that's one way to put it. What's another way to put it?
Behind the scenes, I think, is pretty
Yeah,
common.
behind the
Yeah.
scenes a little bit. Because it's really hard. No matter who you talk to, the hardest part is, people don't want to share what's behind the curtain. You get a lot of that. And then, this recent Blade Show West this last fall was able to connect with Justin over OCD for EDC. And he, already established a good relationship and friendship with Tim over at Chris Reeve Knives.
Right.
And he's like, hey, you know what? I got it set up. We're going to drive back because I made the crazy mistake of driving to Salt Lake from Portland. I did it all in one day. And
Yeah,
it's like
12 hours straight wears you out a little bit, doesn't it?
that's for the young guys. No, I'm
Right.
just kidding. But but it was wild, and I could have planned it a little better. I think I should have just stopped in Boise, because on the way back we stopped in Boise, and I was able to spend some good time with Justin again, and then we ended up going to Chris Reeve Knives the next day, and really got a behind the scenes look at how they run their operation, and that video is coming out soon. And the nice part about that is he's an open book, and is really different from the majority of the knife manufacturers, and to the point of like literally walking you up right to a machine and being like, take all the photos you want, take all the videos you want, ask me any questions.
Yeah.
And
And that is so rare to happen in any kind of manufacturing facility.
right,
People don't
right.
want any of their secrets or trade tips or anything getting shared. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
so while we were doing this tour, I think it was Jens Onzo. He showed up, and because he was in town for Blade Show, and he wanted to go, meet up with Tim and the family and stuff. And so he ended up walking through the rest of the tour with us, and man, literally seeing every part of how they build their knives is incredible, and the attention to detail is amazing from the beginning to the end of the process. And being able to go, and then we ended up going and having lunch with everybody, and his mom came along as well, and talking to everybody. It's just amazing. And so it's like, okay, and then literally he's like, oh, you know what, let's go over to Koenig, let's go see what they're doing. And they were a little more, they showed you everything behind the curtain, but they weren't as like, hey, take photos and videos of anything you want. They were a little more guarded on things,
Yeah.
which makes sense. And they're a
Sure.
lot smaller of an operation, but they make some incredible knives as well, as you know.
Yes.
Um, so that really opened up my eyes to like, the community wants to see this stuff, and so I've been kind of trying to work with some of the manufacturers in the Portland area to be like, hey, let's show some things to people that aren't being shown right now.
Yeah.
And this is several manufacturers who are not doing things on their own, otherwise I wouldn't bother them about things. And trying to break that comfort level has been something that has been hard to do. And it's not for any sort of like, because it's hard having a YouTube channel or a social media outlet to be like, hey, I want to do this style of video. Can we get your guys' sign off on it? It's really hard with a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And and granted, it's like, I don't even care. I mean, it would be cool to have it on my channel, you know, um, but I don't even care if they took the opportunity to do that for themselves. And it's just not something that these companies do. And so for me, it's like, it's a weird scenario to be in. So I hope this year breaks through that, because I've got a couple approvals on some things. And I think, we'll get a couple of these manufacturers on camera to have
That'd be
fun
awesome.
with.
Yeah.
I'm not a big production like Blade HQ or somebody that can come in and be like, hey, because like, I don't know if you remember, it's been a few years maybe. Blade HQ came through, like, even at Benchmade, and they're like, hey, we want to do a tour, but we also want to do like an employee pocket check, because they used to do a lot of those videos no matter where they went.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was kind of cool to see that video and be like, oh yeah, and you recognize some people obviously and stuff, and you're like, okay. But it was cool because the community watched that and was like, oh, this is what they're carrying. Oh, I didn't even think about that model. That model would be cool too. And so then you're seeing like other people like at other companies that are carrying other knives. And that was one of the things like was eye opening to see at a couple companies over the last couple years is, not, I mean, they obviously, like, just like Benchmade, they would prefer their employees to carry their own knives, right?
Right.
Hey, we want our employees to carry Benchmades. They had a couple people in management prior who were like, yeah, we want you to carry a Benchmade, but we'd also encourage you to carry something that you really enjoy to carry, but we want to know why,
Yeah.
right? And it's the same thing no matter what product it is. Hey, we want you to carry our product or use our product, but if there's something else that you enjoy using, bring it
Yeah,
and then tell us why you like it, because maybe it's something we can incorporate to a future product. I mean, right? It's all about their own business at the same time.
sure.
Um, so I really want to get that behind the scenes curtain look, and I'm hoping to continue that. And hopefully this doesn't like close that door, but that's kind of a little snippet of some of the things that I'm bringing out this year on the channel,
Nice.
and really just doing some some things because I'm local to a lot of these companies. And so being able to really get some access, and I don't want to put out everybody's secrets or anything like that, but I think having that community connection already, and then just being like, here's what it's like if you have a Leatherman, because Leatherman's here in Portland, and maybe you send it in for repair, what happens,
Yeah.
or if you're in the Portland area and even if you're traveling through and you stop by and drop something off and they're going to ship it back to you, what does it entail? Like as recently I got that buck knife that was donated to me so
Right.
kindly, and I was like, hey, I hope you're not offended, but I would love, I mean, it's my first buck 110 ever. And I said, I would love to send it in for a spa day and get a new blade and get the other blade returned with it, And they were super open to that. And so I'm like, great. So, but if I was close to buck, I would love to film that process, right? Like, hey, I sent my knife in, or I'm bringing this into you. What happens? What's behind the scenes? Can you show us?
Yeah.
Because that's just going to be the people that are passionate to work there. They're like, hey, we got this knife in, and I want to tear it apart. Maybe it doesn't work right, and it's got maybe some grit. It's sticky, whatever. Maybe a spring's broke. Like, how we know how we can tear it apart and do it here, but how does the company do it?
Right.
And people just it'd be something interesting for people to observe, and I think that would be kind of cool. And then
Absolutely.
do that through all these different companies and really kind of share a little behind the scenes and like see these people that work there, because a lot of people are like, man, the prices at this company are high. Even this other company that had some good budget prices, like they're starting to creep up now, and maybe even get them to talk about it. Hey, you know what, you know CRKT's like, hey, we're just we've been all that's been happening here in our Portland warehouse has been just stuff comes in, they kind of QC it. I say that because it's what it is, but they and then they send it out to dealers. There's no sales that happen at their warehouse here.
Right.
It's literally just kind of a shipping, receiving, QC kind of thing. But now they're having some stuff made here in the U.S. for them, So I want to know a story about that, And I tried to talk to them at SHOT Show this year, and they were just kind of like too cool for school, so to speak. Which it's what it is, We were visiting on like one of the last days, of the show, and so everybody was kind of burned out of talking about their stuff, and they kind of had their own pitch about things. And I kind of want to get them away from the show aspect. You've experienced a lot of shows on the business side,
Right.
and you kind of have that continuous pitch about product,
You do. Yeah.
But if somebody comes to your shop and is like, hey, can I really see behind the scenes what you're doing with this? You're like, heck yeah, I want to
Absolutely.
show you what we do, right? And so I'm kind of hoping to have that reception of like, hey, we really want to show you what we do with this, and here's why we're doing it. Because people are pretty pumped, like CRKT's like, hey, we don't have the manufacturing, but we want to bring some stuff in-house, to the U.S. here and have it made here. And Hogue stepped up and is like, hey, we got some capacity. Let's do it. I talked to
Yeah.
Neil Hogue at SHOT Show and was like, hey, I saw this is happening. And we had a great conversation for like 15, 20 minutes just about that. And I would love to get CRKT to talk about that in a video and then kind of show what they're doing, So those are kind of the reaching out that I've been doing. And I've had probably 50-50, luck so far on people. And
That's
I just
actually
have
not too
good
bad, really.
conversations.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
A lot of them are like, yeah, we could do that. Come by, we'll figure something out, and that's a win for me. I'm
Yeah.
like, not a problem, let's do it. And even if
Yeah.
it's just a walk around video and they want to look at it and view it beforehand and give me their hey, we don't want to show this thing that they're doing, that's fine. I get it,
Yeah.
you know. Or if they want to have a guided tour, or it's not guided, but a pointed tour on certain things, like you can video here, don't video over here. I want to, you know, recognize that and kind of go with their rules. Obviously, it's their
Yeah.
place, but the
Yeah.
community, I think, would love to see some of that stuff, just like what's happening behind the scenes, you know,
Right.
because
Right.
tell the story, right? I mean, that's what
Absolutely
we're
it
doing
does.
here today,
Absolutely.
telling my story, and I'm talking way too much. So you probably got some other
Yeah.
questions to ask,
Well,
but
we'll get to them. You're probably ready for a drink there, but no, I mean, to kind of speak to what you've been talking about. I mean, I'm a fan. I've always loved behind the scenes stuff. I mean, obviously we've talked about it a lot. I love to tear stuff apart, build it, customize it, and I love to learn just the behind the scenes. So, obviously, we've already, kind of broached this in the past. I'm excited for it. I hope you get the success to do that. And manufacturers, if any of you guys are actually seeing this at any point, work with the man. We want to see what he's got to show. We want to see what you guys are doing. We love your stuff. So yeah, I'd love to see that happen. That'd be outstanding. So that'd be awesome. Hopefully, get the and that one you were talking about, that from stopping in Boise and Chris Reeves. That's one you're working on, kind of getting prepared to put that out at some point coming up. You said.
yeah, I'm not a big editor, and I took so many small clips, and I want to make sure I don't miss the details of it. So
Right.
being able to put all those video clips together and then kind of do a little bit of narration over top of it and having kind of a script and where it's at. That's what I'm finishing up right now, is because I want to make sure it kind of flows. And
Right.
I also want to make sure that I provide the right information, because a lot of it was, videoed. There was a lot of talking content going on at the same time, but I wasn't like miking that up. And we're in a machine environment, so you're not getting the audio quality that you
Right.
want. So I'll probably have that stuff turned down and then kind of recap, like, hey, this is the process they use for this.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, yeah, so it's going well, but I'm not an editor and I don't have a staff of anyone. So,
Yeah.
it's and I don't know if you've gotten them already, but I know several people that probably have channels have gotten them. You get, your emails out there, on your channel, and people are like, hey, we can help you edit all your videos, and it only costs so much per video. And it's like, I might make $1.75 on that video, So it's like,
Right.
if I spend my time on it, like that, my time's just donated to the channel.
Yeah.
But if I go and spend, $100 paying somebody to edit a video for me, I probably will never recoup that $100. So I
Yeah.
just got to be mindful of what I do with it. And I know there's a lot of super talented people that have some amazing editing skills, and their channels are amazing with that. And one day I hope to be able to put the time in and learn that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the cool thing is technology is actually getting to where it's making that stuff easier. I used to do a
Right.
little bit of that stuff and hadn't really done much of it for a few years. I've been pleasantly surprised at the options.
Hmm.
You're still learning some new stuff, so it's still a little bit different. So there's still that process, but yeah, it's getting a lot easier than it was. So I know you can do it. You're a sharp dude. You'll get it figured out. So, and it's interesting how you can sit down and talk to a camera for 5 or 10 minutes, and okay, cool, that
Hmm.
was easy. Got that video recorded. And then all of a sudden, 5 hours later, you're hitting the upload button, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you had to go through and you had to actually work through and piece. Even if there's minor editing, just getting a thumbnail, in there, or some
Yeah.
kind of an intro or outro card or something like that put on there. Boy, I've been figuring all that out for the last few weeks here, trying to do that. Thank goodness you helped me get going on a few. It was like, oh boy, I had no idea there was this much on the back end of this stuff.
Yeah. And the frustrating part for me is like, music's a hard part to deal with, because when you're looking at music, like, I love to do some vlogs where I'm like, hey, I'm running errands today, or maybe there's a couple days that I'm going to go out and
Right,
run some errands. I love a good Harbor Freight and some other stores. But it's like they always put music on really loud. And so if I don't like put an earpiece in, or if I don't talk loud enough,
right.
that music is flagged when you upload your video. And it's like, oh, this is all copyrighted. You need to remove all that. And it's like, okay. So then it's like there's certain segments, like on my last vlog, I'm like, okay, I got to take the volume out of those two segments, those two video segments when I'm, doing the editing. I got to narrate over that stuff. I mean, it changes the sound and the tone, obviously, because you're not getting the sound of the store and
Right.
other shoppers and stuff. But it's like, I still want to include that stuff. But it's like sometimes you miss out on the content that you've already put out there. Like, you say a pretty funny joke and you're like, oh, that was pretty funny in the moment. But you're like, this sounds weird when you're trying to narrate that same joke later on, or, that comment.
Yeah.
And then I've also found that when I do these videos and pre-record them, not the lives, but I try to have a list of topics I want to talk about. Hey, I want to unbox this. I want to talk about this on it. I want to talk about, cover the specs on it. But then, like, you get done and you watch it and you do some editing, and then you're like, we're good to go. Let's load it up. Let's get it ready. You do all the other work on the back end of YouTube to, like, get all your stuff loaded and everything else done, and then you get a date to publish it in a time. You're like, awesome. You feel good about it. You're like, on to the next project. And then literally your video posts, the day you have it scheduled, and then, in the comments, somebody's like, oh, you didn't even talk about this. And I'm like, oh, it was on my list. And, like, maybe you had to, like, for me, like, I'll go back and refilm stuff. And then in my mind, I'm like, did I cover that? I'm like, maybe I missed that. So I've kind of come up with a new system on, like, a checklist of when I'm going through it, of like, okay, I've talked about those specs. I've talked about the history of this. I've talked about, when I met with this person, they told me about why they did this a certain way. I want to talk about that. But then if I re-record it, I want to have a whole new list, so I don't, like, have to check it twice, or, so it's those little things. It's like, it's nothing huge and crucial, but it's like one of those things that you just have to work on yourself and be like,
Absolutely.
hey, that's one of the behind the scene things where you're like, danger, stupid kills, like,
Right.
that's how it goes. But we're all going to make mistakes. We're just here to have fun with it. Like I said, the community's been terrific, and I really look forward to not only, of course, my live streams, but other people's, being able to see people in there again and meet new people. You go to your live stream and I've met new people, go to other people's live stream and meet new people. And it's like,
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you're finding out, this person's like super big into off-roading that's on, your live stream and doing some builds. And I'm like, man, I want to see that. Like,
right. Exactly.
send me a photo,
Yeah.
or send you a photo so you can
Yeah.
show it to us. Like, then it's just expanding the community, expanding, your relationships and friendships with people, and then being able to really, like, solidify those when you go to blade shows,
Right.
And being able to meet people in person, spend some time with them, and, then you really get to know people outside the computer world of it,
Yeah. And
so
that
that's
really
been
is
cool.
so much a rewarding part of the community. And I
It is.
and to be honest with you, I mean, jumping in online in the conversation's been wonderful, and doing the things we kind of do on our daily lives and stuff. But probably one of the things that really brought me into the community, I'd say a lot harder, more hardcore, was getting to my first meetup. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and it was so uncanny. I look back at it now; it was kind of meant to be. We were hanging out and just getting away for the weekend, and we were about 3 hours south of where the meetup was going to happen, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it was literally about midnight or 1 o'clock. And if I remember right, you and Justin were monkeying around, jumping in, doing some kind of you guys were working on a camera setup, and you were just kind of doing a random unpublished live.
I think so. Yeah.
And somehow I ended up seeing that. I was up late, like I normally am, and just surfing around. I was like, what the heck are they doing on this late? So I hopped on there. The next thing I know, you guys are talking about doing a random meetup. I'm like, holy crap! It's like, can we get there by the time they do this? It's like, well, if we
Yeah.
if we leave in 2 hours, yeah. And I never remember it. It was a Benchmade, that impromptu
Mm.
Benchmade meetup that you guys had, and OCD was in from out of town. There's
Oh
actually
yeah.
quite a collection of characters there. Pocket Metal came down, JB came down, said
Now
Stevie was there, Marshall
was
was
Jay
there.
the prior? I remember we set one up at a park because we had gone to Voodoo Donuts,
And that was
and then we
before
did a
this one, yeah.
we did a random live at that one too, because Justin's like, we gotta show them that we're eating these donuts. I'm like, all right.
Yeah.
So I was like, let's go find this park over here, and we just pulled up to the park and had a random live stream. But I want to
Right.
say, Eggs and Ham was there
Yeah. Eggs was there because I
on that
remember
one.
meeting him.
Yeah,
Yeah. He was also down at the workshop one.
yeah,
And I know we're going to forget a whole bunch of people. Probably should have never started naming names. But I mean, for something that was put together, I think with you guys, if I remember the story right, you guys had only kind of been talking about it a little bit throughout the week, and it kind of came together at the last moment. And I
yeah.
just
I think
remember
we had like,
cruised up there.
I think we had a week and a half or 2 week kind of knowledge of it ahead of time, and I think I was also. Because Pocket Metal was that the one? No, no, no. I'm sorry, I was thinking of the workshop one. But yeah, the other one was like super short notice because I
It
think all of a
was, yeah,
sudden Justin was coming in from out of town,
yeah, and I think
and he
that's
was like,
kind of what
"Hey,
inspired it a little bit. Yeah.
yeah." He's like, "Hey, I'm gonna be
Hmm.
in town. Can we do something?" I'm like, "Man, let me make a call over to Benchmade and see if we can kind of just do a meetup in the parking lot." And then, and then they were basically like, "Was that the one that they kind of took us upstairs?"
Yes.
And
Hmm.
gave us the overview of the
Yeah.
factory floor and stuff.
We were
So
the
that was
first.
kind of cool of them to do that.
Yeah, we were the first group back in. It was kind of as we were starting to kind of come out of all the lockdowns and stuff with COVID shortly after.
Yeah.
And I think we were the first group that they said they'd taken up there since they shut it down when COVID happened.
Yeah. Sue, I mean,
So,
shout out to John from Benchmade, man. He kind of made
oh
that
yeah,
happen. He
he's
and he
such a
actually
good
came in
human,
for
John.
it.
Yeah,
And he came in for it too, because
yeah,
I think that was on a Saturday. And
it was.
so
Yep.
wasn't a normal day that he works and all that. And so it was cool that such short notice he like and then here's the thing, just so you know, and he's told you this too, but he's a
Yeah,
knife guy.
yeah,
Like he loves, his Benchmates, but he also loves, other
yeah.
manufacturers, and the products they're putting out. So he's a knife guy through and through. And so he's like, oh, there's people coming down. I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, let me see what I can do. And so that was kind of cool of him to set that stuff up for us. So
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. But yeah, I know the knife meetups and putting faces with names. I just remember showing up and it was like, who are all these people? Because the vast
yeah,
majority of people, there was a few people there, their faces were out there, right? But I
hmm
wasn't even sure who you were. At that
yeah,
time, it was like at that time, I think maybe I'd seen a picture of you from one of the blade shows or something. Just real, it was real random, rare back
yeah.
then. And like, I don't know, and is that Zach or is that Zach? And I knew JB's
Yeah.
face was out there, and remember meeting JB there, and that was the day that I acquired the Finch problem. I acquired the Finch problem at Benchmade, and it was when
But here's
yeah,
my important thing of that,
yeah,
and you can probably like totally admit the truth of this.
yeah,
You got hands on with so many knives that people brought
you nailed it
because,
right there,
like Pocket
absolutely.
Metal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like he's bringing his slip joint collection. Big Red's bringing his collection, and it's anything from Finches to Benchmates to slip joints, and it's like
Yeah,
everybody's bringing stuff, and then you have like Slim Tissue bringing some like customed out Benchmade stuff that he's
right,
worked on and built, and it's like you're meeting people and all of these other things, and you're like, oh my gosh, and then you're like, this is really nice. I've never put this in hand because
yeah,
I don't know about where you're at, but even here in Portland, like we have one like knife company that's in a mall. Um, it's harder to get into the mall than just being able to drive up to a strip mall
right,
store and walk in and go, hey, and that's your local blade dealer, and you're like, this is great. But being able to see so many people's collections and their passion,
yeah,
and then have them go, here's why I love this knife, and you're
yeah,
like, oh, I could totally see
100%.
that.
Well,
So
and not only seeing them, because like you say, most people for most stuff, and I get it. There's some stuff that's it's there and gone, and it becomes a unicorn to try to ever handle it, right? But see what's out there, but see how people are modifying it. Seeing how
mhm.
people are accessorizing it. I was fascinated by all the different, just the knife carriers that people had there that day.
Yep.
Knife pouches, knife rolls. Some people had just backpacks that they were all thrown in there, and stuff like that. And I wasn't even I didn't even leave from home when I went up there. I only had what I had, and it was like, oh, here's my chance for my little collection. I could have taken it up there, And it was like I would have
Yeah.
had to have driven an hour and a half the other way and turn around and gone right back there to get it. And I think this was the only guy I had in my hand. I mean
Yeah,
that
that's a
that would
beautiful build.
and that was one of my first builds, and it was my 940 with the Met and Boss scales on it. And this is usually what's in my pocket on the weekends when I'm not working,
Yeah.
and that's why it happened. So I got lucky. I had one of my favorite knives and one of my better knives to
Yeah.
show off. But you're sitting there with one knife in your pocket, and you got guys rolling. And not that everybody brought a ton of knives, but we've kind of talked. That's the day that I got hooked on the Finches, and new guy there. JB's out there on those front steps.
Hmm.
He just opened up his roll, and he was just like, "All right, everybody, what are we gonna look at?"
Well, it was a tailgate party, and I
It
think like
was right in the
wasn't it
parking lot.
Stevie? Was it Stevie that brought the table? He brought like a little pop up, fold out kind
Yeah,
of
because you and Justin ended
table.
up over there on it, and it was kind of right as we were getting ready to go. You guys were Justin was bouncing off the walls because he had the new what we now know as Slick 'em All, and he was just
Oh,
dying to try to. That was the day that you guys took your version of this,
yep,
and as we were actually getting ready to leave to head home, you guys were Slick 'em All up, and my guess is that still got the same Slick 'em All in them from that day.
yep, yep,
Yep,
100%.
yep.
Super drop shutty still.
Yep.
Haven't had to put anything on it. Carried all the time. Yeah,
So
and that was the thing too, because we did it on that one, and we did it on the prior one we did at my house was the Ritter RSK, the full size.
yeah, and that's what you guys were
And
messing on that late night live when you were playing with your camera
yeah,
equipment, and it was kind of like, what the heck are these doing? And they weren't really talking about what it was called
yeah,
or what everything. But no,
yeah,
and it was so incredible, and yeah, it was handling it. It was seeing people interacting with each other doing it, people helping fix some knives, and he's like,
right,
here, let's try this because if I remember right, your mini Adamas, the reason you tried that out is it needed some love. It wasn't
yeah,
necessarily super smooth for whatever the
yeah.
reasons I don't remember, but no, that was
Well, I
inspiring.
think that one
So
had some Loctite bleed over too.
is that what it ended up being in there? Yeah.
So like, but besides doing a full clean and then getting off, like, because I'd used it so much already, there
Yeah.
was so much dirt buildup in and around the washers and between the washer and the blade, and so cleaning that up. And he's like, his typical attitude. He's like, I got you, son. Like, we're gonna put this in there. It's gonna blow your mind. And I'm like, okay, okay. And it has,
Yeah.
it's been a wonderful product to use, and as like, I mean, honestly,
Oh
for
yeah.
what it is, you can't get that stuff right now. So
Oh, I've not found anything, and I mean, it was after seeing that, and then it was a while before he actually had it ready to purchase. Not
right,
not not a
right,
long while, but there was still a gap in there, and it was like that
yeah,
stuff was amazing. It was like, I mean, I probably wasn't the first day, but it was probably the first week or two that he had it out. I was like, give me some. I saw that stuff in action. I want to try
yeah.
it. But yeah,
That's the
no,
hard part about that, right? You see a
yeah,
product, you've been able to physically look at it and
yeah,
handle it when he was in the testing phase, and he's like, oh, it's not ready yet, and it's like, well, that sold me. And obviously test of time, right? Like,
right.
okay, works great today, but how's it going to work in a month? How's it going to work in 6 months? And
Mm-hmm.
that's been what, a couple years,
It's been 2 years ago.
and
Pretty close. I
it's
think that was like what
solid.
March, maybe early April. I think it was March,
Hmm.
sometime in March that we met up there. So just
Yeah.
past 2 years, probably.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So no, I mean just the community and the camaraderie, the support online. Getting together and meeting stuff. It's been wonderful to meet people. And the way the community comes together, the development of products like Slip 'em All. There's so many, whether they're
Hmm.
creators or just members of the community that don't necessarily have a channel they're promoting, that have come up with their own knives designed, and are actually getting them produced, and
Yeah.
things. That's exciting to see that.
It is.
You see the lefties of the world and the Devos come about and the knives fast, and what he's doing and finally getting his going. I mean, poor Casey, you got to give it to him. He got off to a bit of a rough start on that first one, when he was trying to get that first one going and it didn't happen for him. that had to be hard. And to come back and recover and to end up with multiple knives after that and having some success with it, that's got to feel pretty awesome.
Yeah,
You know?
and it's good. Like, I mean, I would have a hard time doing it myself because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know, we of course have been privy to some behind the scenes, community chats and things where, you're seeing that some of the daily struggles. And I mean, whether you like them or not, the pre-orders are hard to swallow for a lot of people,
They are.
especially in the world of knives where, it's hard enough on drop day when you're like, oh, this knife comes out today at this time and it crashes, the manufacturer or the dealer website, and
Yeah.
then maybe you miss out on it. It's hard enough for those people, or it's hard enough that if you get one, you got to wait, because they usually do it end of the week, right? Like a Thursday or
Yeah.
Friday. And it's like, so now you got to wait till Tuesday or Wednesday till you get your knife shipped to you. And that's hard enough because you're like, man,
Absolutely.
super pumped. I mean, I'm blessed that, I'm in the Portland metro area. So if Benchmade drops something, I'm like, hey, I need to be up there on a Tuesday or a Thursday to pick one up the day it drops. I might have to take a long lunch and go do that.
Right.
Uh, and that's that, that gets into that psyche of like being able to want something, get it in your hand, and be like, this is awesome.
Yeah.
So I don't, pre-orders are hard, man. There's a lot of people that support them. There's a lot of people that despise them, and I get the reasons on both sides, but I
Yeah.
just feel for the people that are doing them. And, you got companies doing them,
Yeah.
bigger companies that are doing, pre-order stuff. And that's, to me, that's a little more interesting.
Yeah.
But that probably dives a little too deep into from this conversation, but,
Yeah. Well,
um,
maybe we'll
you
circle
know,
back and we'll talk about that because, I mean, there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff. I think there's so many. The other night on the live, it was kind of mentioned on my soapbox a little bit just about business and stuff like that. There's so much going on in manufacturing, business, and stuff this day and age that the consumer I don't really think is aware of that goes on. So there's probably
right.
some good conversations. I call pre-orders and drops a necessary evil. you know. And my first pre-order was my Devo Stout, and I
Hmm.
think from when he did the pre-orders on these, if I remember right, it was about March or April, maybe early May at the most. But I want to say it was about three to 5 months somewhere in there. And at the time of my knife life, this was a pretty intense purchase for me at that time. And
Hmm.
I mean, it wasn't breaking the bank, but it felt like it. And to have that money out there for 3 4 months, and then it finally showed up. And there was times you're stressed, like, oh man, am I getting ripped off here? It's like this is my first time doing this, and it was from Lefty, and I know now, that wasn't even a possibility. But being new to the community, not really knowing the personalities that well, then it was like it felt like a real risk. And to make it worse, the day that it showed up and it got here, I'd had a horrible day and I was in a horrible
Mm.
mood. And for me to open a knife like that, I'd never done that before in my life. And obviously when you're dealing with those kind of knives, I'd always been a thumb stud. I mean, you can roll them out, but let's face it, that knife is not the best. Yes, it rolls fine. There's nothing wrong with the knife. But once you start to do that and you flick it, I couldn't do that. And I'd waited 3, 4, 5 months, whatever it was. I melted down at home over this. It was like I spent that much money, waited that long, and I hate this knife. And it was I just had a bad day and I was in a bad frame of mind is
Yeah.
all it was. And a couple of days later I picked it back up and was like, oh wow, this is one of the best damn knives I could have bought. So
Yeah, and
um,
that's hard. Like, and I think I've kind of turned my sights on like, and I've ordered plenty of, pre-orders or, Kickstarter kind of things, from a lot of different people. That's the hard part, is having the money out there and being like, is it going to happen? You know, you kind of get bummed if it doesn't. I like supporting people now who have kind of turned into making their own things, the Steve Kalaris, the Aries EDC, those kind of things where it's like you can actually like I mean, it's kind of a pre-order, but
yeah,
you're purchasing a knife that they're going to make for you.
yeah,
Uh, and that's kind of a cool thing. That's kind of a really
Yeah.
cool thing. So,
Yeah.
and
I
I get
just,
like it's
mm,
going to be, you don't have a lot of people, making folding knives, right? Per order kind of a
right.
thing. Most of them are being manufactured by somebody else somewhere else. And seeing the people in the community support that is awesome,
Yeah.
because like, getting this one, the Bloom, from Aries EDC. It's just an amazing, beautiful little fixed blade,
It is.
and hopefully it shows up on camera here. But
Yeah. No, it
it's
looks
just one of
good.
those things where it's like, you can see it, all the pictures and videos you want. Getting an opportunity in a pass around to check it out, and then you open it up and get it in hand, like, good Lord,
Yeah.
that is some good quality and time spent on making that knife,
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
then I'm like looking at everything in his stuff, going, okay, I need to get up on that list,
Yep.
like, how do I do that? Like, okay, he opens up so
Uh,
many spots, okay.
yeah.
So, but yeah, I think being able to support people in our community is huge. I wish there was obviously some more like U.S. manufacturing, that some of those companies like Hogue and things like that would take on some smaller projects. Um, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think it's a lot of like, no matter who you're going to deal with to, build your knife design, you're going to have to put some money into the engineering, prototyping, and then you're going to have to put some money down to get it made. And that's the biggest hurdle I think that a lot of the community members are having, because people don't have, 20, 30 grand to go,
Yeah.
you know, pony up for something like that. So,
And
I
and
mean, I think if
and
I ever did
hence the
one, and
necessary evil on the pre-orders. Is to
yeah,
actually be able
and
to
I think
fund this. So yeah.
right, I think if I ever did one, I think I would probably want to just like save up the money, do some extra things to get that, money in hand, and really, if I believe in it that much, I just want to get the money and do it.
Right.
I think it would just stress me out too much to try to do, a Kickstarter or, crowdfunding thing, and or a pre-order, because it's like, you're going to be committed already for probably 10 grand no matter what, but the full 30, to purchase all the knives and get them shipped over is the hard part. So, I mean, I would love one day to be able to partner with like Benchmade or Hogue, and make my own design knife. Maybe even if it's a kick off something they already do. I mean, Benchmade, the 940. Just saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I get it. I get it. But I have fun with it either way. I've still bought plenty of them. I still have plenty of them in my knife drawer right here. So
Right. Right. There you go. Now and I'm not 100% on this. I probably should have asked you this before I asked this question. Memory serves me right though. You have worked with them at least on the input and development level on some stuff though at Benchmade though, right? I mean, if memory
um
serves me right, one of my favorites, you were involved at least in discussions on the development of it.
there's some things with
I
the
could be
with
wrong.
the
I don't know
Super
if you can
Freak
see.
that I was lucky to have some relationships and be brought in to like get some research and development prototypes,
Okay.
and be like, here's what's going on. One of the things I did, but it was too late in the process, was, I showed up with mine like this. Here, I'll show you. I showed up with mine with red thumb studs.
Right.
Now, granted, they put these on the carbon fiber one, but that was one of the comments that, one of the higher ups made. Like, damn it, why didn't we do red thumb studs on that, And that was on the original, that was on the Super Freak, the gray and black G10, the one you have. But
Yeah.
it's just one of those
Hmm.
things where it's kind of cool to see, how they work through these things. And, it's kind of neat when a manufacturer reaches out and is like, hey, you know, we want to put something in your hand. We want to use it, test it. Don't show it, which is the hardest part in the world.
Right. Because you
But,
want to show
you
everybody.
gotta, yeah, you gotta respect that stuff. And, at the same time, like, they're like, you can show people, if they see you using it or whatever, and they're like, hey, what's that? Don't let people take photos. Like, there's, a list of rules and stuff. And, gonna sign your life away a little bit. But the nice part is, you can get that insight, and I don't have the opportunity to get hands on with a lot of stuff early. I know people are like, "Hey, you're the owner of Benchmade and whatnot," but as Benchmade said in that Blade HQ live stream, like, I wasn't in the basement, they checked, and you know, but being able to like talk to people who are working on certain products and designs and being able to provide some input and be like, hey, it would be really neat if this happened because the community, likes this addition or
Yeah.
they likes this option, or, hey, it would be really great to have the 940s in the custom shop, you know.
Right.
When they hear enough things, that's why I have a list, antennas on the butterflies, maybe we'll see that again.
Right.
We had numbers on the first productions and the limited editions, that stuff's come back a little bit. So we're already getting to see some of that stuff. So I'm just looking at my list from before.
Right.
But that's one of those things where, many of the smaller manufacturers are doing that already. They're talking to their friends, the people that are building their own designs. They're putting it in hands of people, Casey, for example, and some others have, just like this balloon from Aries, they put it out in people's hands. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know if there's something we should change. So it doesn't matter if they're a, multi-million-dollar company or somebody that's doing a Kickstarter. You're putting that in people's hands in the community who are using that product every day and saying, is there anything you notice that we can improve?
Right. Right.
Are you seeing anything? Because you get a knife in your hand and you're like, yeah, okay, it works great. Or, there's lock stick on this. Or, if it's a frame lock or a liner lock, like maybe it travels a little too much, or, this is loose. But then you get some companies that are making aftermarket products, and you're like, hey, how do these scales work for you? They're putting that in people's hands ahead of time. Rogue Blade Works has, sent some stuff to me in the past, and they're like, what do you think of this one? And, I was like, well, this is working great, but I'm seeing that with my build, the blade's coming down and just barely kissing the barrel spacer. Oh, that's a adjustment we can make. They do a little change, you build another one, and it works flawlessly, So having those opportunities to put something in somebody's hand and you fix a problem before you make a bunch of them,
Right.
it's how every business operates. So it's kind of cool when you get people, even like, Aries that sends stuff out and is like, this is my heart and soul. I make this, but be brutally honest, like,
Yeah.
and so that's kind of cool to see.
Well, and the funny thing is having created and developed a few not knife related things or things like that in my life, just as a person that likes to build and make stuff all my life, when you ask people to be brutally honest because you really, really need their input, there are times where you just know that they're just being nice and just placating your ass, right? And it's like, no, come on, really tell me what you think. It's like, I want to refine this. I want to get it good. But, that's the other thing about the community, though, and what we do here is that, and hopefully manufacturers tune in to your content and different content. Hopefully they tune into my content at some point. But that's where the community via the channels, and whether it's comments or sending in messages, maybe somebody doesn't want to post a comment, but they send you a message, say, Zach, will you talk about this or whatever, and it's a way for the community to speak to the people that are developing the products that they're looking for. And,
Right.
It seems to me just in the few years that I've kind of been involved that they listen a little bit more. Not all of them. Sometimes you wonder, it's like,
Right.
weren't you listening to what we were talking about last year and you still went ahead
Yeah.
and released that new version of it this year with that? And we pretty much told you we weren't interested if you went and did that.
Right.
But then again, stuff will come up and all of a sudden you'll see something that really didn't make sense get fixed pretty quick the next time around.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the bigger the company, the bigger I don't know, the people that are speaking out about stuff or are speaking out and going, man, you finally released the Super Mini Freak that we've all been waiting for. Thank you.
Yeah.
Like,
Right?
hey, couple years, but they listen to us. But in the
Absolutely. Right
meantime,
there. Got her.
right. And in the meantime, they don't understand, the knife community. You have to understand that they've had other models planned, they've had these other things, and do they have the capacity, to build those things?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's kind of like I've seen some really quick transitions. Like liner locks are the big thing, frame locks are the big thing. Then it's top flippers are the big thing. Or then it's button locks are the big thing, and you
Right.
see that transition, and some of the manufacturers overseas are hitting those popularity things quicker.
Yeah.
So they're like,
Yeah.
oh, people like button locks, okay, shelf all that, we're going to put button locks in this model because it's super popular and we're going to pump it out. Let's get the engineering done and make it happen. That's cool. Some of the American manufacturers have a harder time pivoting because they got so much invested in it.
Oh,
um,
absolutely. And there's so much to that. And I think sometimes consumers, whether it's in the EDC knife community or district, they don't understand how long it takes to develop stuff.
right,
I
right.
know in the automotive world, the OEs, Ford, Dodge, Toyota, whoever, they're working on stuff. I mean, we're 2024. They're working on stuff for 28, 29, 30 right now.
Right, right.
Because if they're not working on it that far out, it takes that long to get it in, get it through development and production. And
Right.
you take a company the size of Benchmade or a Spyderco, for them to get their lines to come out and get ready for next year, they had to be working on. I don't know. You probably know this better than I do. This might be a good topic for some of your behind the scenes, is to find out how far out are you trying to develop it. And that's where the
Yeah.
community and like a behind the scenes thing you're talking about, it might actually help the consumer and the manufacturers understand if you can get them to share those processes a little bit more, and why
Yeah, and
can't you
that's
just fix this stuff so fast or change it so
yeah.
fast?
And I think that relates to more of the like what they are hard to release, or that's the information they have a hard time releasing. So, you talk to anybody and it's like, well, and everybody's like, yeah, we're working ahead a couple years, but getting into the details, people are really guarded on that.
Yeah,
You know, like I said, Tim Reeves been the only person that, hands down, just asking him whatever, he'll give you an answer to it
yeah,
for the most part. What about this? Well, we did this.
yeah,
I tuned into a really good conversation that he and Steve Kalari had, and it was about MagnaCut and those kind of things. And he's like, we had a hard time working with MagnaCut, and he's like, just figuring out how to get it right. They were talking to Laren a whole bunch about it and just getting it dialed in for their own use. And then, he's like, he had another knife manufacturer call him and was like, man, I'm having a hell of a time with this. And he's like, hold on. He heads out to his, shop floor and he's like, okay, what are we doing in this process to get this to work right?
yeah.
And then he's looking at all the stuff that they've gone through and he's sharing information. You never hear that happening in manufacturing. People
Yeah.
are just,
No, they're
they
very
hold
tight
on to
lipped.
that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
you know. So kind of like that's the stuff that people need to hear that they're not hearing.
Yeah,
Like
exactly.
those are some trade secrets sometimes, and all of a sudden he's just like, man, I want it to be successful, so I'm gonna make sure that other people know about it.
Yeah. This
But
is just a personal opinion, but and I understand trade secrets and not being able to share everything in business as well. But the one thing that says to me, and I've seen a few interviews that Tim has done, just in general, and his mom and his dad, obviously, that confidence, total confidence,
right,
confidence, and that's the thing. I don't have any Chris Reeve knives. I'd like to at some point, but they stay in their box pretty hard, and it's like we play to this. These are our strengths, and you don't see them come out with 10 or 15 wild, crazy models every year, but
right.
they what they do it better than anybody, and they do it consistently.
That's the
And
one I missed out on, man. I missed out Blade Show West. Oh, 2018, I think maybe is in
mhm.
Portland. Man, I missed out on a beauty. and they had like 3 of them when the show started.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, this, and I'm like, man, I can't decide between the small or the large. I got both of them in hand, and I'm like, gosh dang it. And it wasn't a big money difference, maybe $100 between the, bigger this or the smaller large. And I was like, oh, I'll come back. And like, I was still new into the knife community, right?
Right.
And I mean, worst case scenario, I should have just bought both, put it on my credit card and sold the other one, because I came back maybe an hour and a half later and they were all gone. And I'm like,
Yeah,
what is with
that
this,
hurts when they're gone before you can get your hands on them. We were just talking about
Yeah.
that. I missed one
Oh, yeah.
yesterday.
Oh yeah. That's hard. So, and that's when like I said, being 2018, just starting the channel up, just looking, into, getting more of a variety of a collection, and attending a blade show that was local. And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's so much here. And then missing out, I'm like, I need to figure out what's going on with this. And then you realize, like, oh, they're 3 to 4 years on back order, just for the orders they have on manufacturing and getting those completed. And it's like, oh, geez. So when they were here and actually had product, that's why people came in and just bought them.
Yeah.
Because they're like, you don't see a lot of them, like the stuff you see hitting dealers, they ordered, many years ago. And there might be some product upgrades when they're building them, like maybe the inlays or things like that, or a finish to them. But for the majority, it's like those got ordered and money placed a long time ago.
Yeah.
So, it's crazy. The world, the demand is there. And like, I think that's the difference too. Like I think he said, I'll have to go back and look at the video again, but it'll be in my video. But they were like somewhere between, I think it was like 2,000 and 3,000 knives a month they were putting out, something like that. And that included their U.S. military knife as well, their fixed blade. And then of course the information we got from Benchmade was like, hey, we're putting out over 30,000 knives a month. And it's like, what?
Yeah.
You get that information, like, holy cow.
Yeah.
So,
well, and you couple in all the material supply issues that these guys have been dealing with off and on for the last 4 years now, 5 years now, whatever it is, skyrocketing costs and stuff like that. It's amazing that so many of them stayed afloat, to be quite honest with you.
Right. Right.
But yeah, the challenges in developing this stuff's got to be amazing. So I'm a big fan of what you want to do, and try to get some behind the scenes and behind the curtain kind of access if you can get it. I mean, I just love learning all that stuff. But I would be really remiss if I didn't go for a little behind the curtain kind of question. I've been saving this one. Definitely got to make sure we get this one shot across the bow here. Hashtag DSKFS.
Yes.
Just spill, dude. Spill. I've seen you get a couple opportunities to kind of get a chance to do it, and don't necessarily always get a chance. Go. You want 2 seconds, 10 minutes, 2 hours of fame to talk about hashtag DSKFS. How did it start? Where did it come from?
So it didn't start right away with my channel. Obviously, being Zach stuff, you guys have seen the original logos. As a matter of fact, I have some here. The original Zach stuff logo was, I'm not a designer, right? And so I reached out to, an online community and was like, hey, I'm looking for a graphic designer to do this. I didn't know about all the connections in the community at the time, and paid somebody to design that. And I was happy with it. It was better than anything I had come up with. And I'm like, hey, it incorporates a knife into the A. And I'm like, sweet, And as I got more interaction with the community, obviously, like I said, many people helped me out, took time to help me out. Others weren't so helpful, but I understood why,
Mm-hmm.
But the outpouring of kindness in the community was there from the beginning. And even when I had, 10 subscribers, the kindness was there. And so I was like, man, there's something going on that I want to harness, right? Now, I had known a long time ago there was a program that I had watched, and it was called Rob and Big, and it was with Rob Deerdick and Big Black. It was like an MTV reality show thing
Okay.
they did. They were all over the place, right? Um, it was super funny. It was great to see their interaction, the adventures they went on, whatever. So I did a lot of recording of those, watched them later, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing that stood out was after the show was over and some behind the scenes stuff, and Rob Deerdick created a huge company, it's Deerdick Enterprises. But in one of the interviews he gave, he said something of what his last name he put into play with his company, with his daily life, everything that happens. And he broke down his last name, right? Deerdick. And he said, I basically came up with, did you really do everything kind? And it was from one interaction to your whole day, to your week, to your team, to whatever. And so I was like, okay. And that literally spells out his last name, Dyrdek. And so I'm like, that's kind of crazy. And I'm like, I wonder if we could put something like that into this community. Like, what are we doing here? People are always, doing something kind for someone, those kind of things. And there's really nothing that had harnessed that around the community that I saw on any of the, forums, the live streams, any of the chats that I was in with people. And I was like, I want to come up with a hashtag that kind of represents something. And so I kicked around a lot of things, and that, I had always, the information that he shared in that, did you really do everything kind? It was like, that's a great motto to just have in your life. But he never promoted that. It wasn't a promotion thing where he, you know, promoted that. That was just a lifestyle thing for him and what he kind of lived by and
Yeah.
what he put on his team and, people he was around. And so that really hit with me. And so I had already been doing that for a long time. And I was like, I obviously don't want to copy him,
Right.
word for word. But I'm like, I want to come up with something that's like that. Do something kind for someone. And it's kind of like, we've seen the stuff of like kindness matters and, things that are out there and stuff. And I was just like, that kind of incorporates it. And the hashtags were really big at the time, and they still are. But it also comes up with something that people are going to ask about it. I want somebody to
Right.
see this. And that's why, I have thousands and thousands of dollars into stickers and patches that I've just given out.
Right.
Um, and that was one of the things where it's just like, did you really do everything kind? And then it's do something kind for someone. And I have had so many people, not only on my own personal stuff, but the stories from people that have received these patches, received these stickers. Are like, man, I put that sticker on my water bottle, and like everybody asks about it
Yeah.
whenever I'm, because they see a logo. They're like, okay, they see a sticker from here. They're like, we
Mm-hmm.
know what that is. They see a sticker from Red Bull or whatever. They know what that is. But people are like, what's hashtag DSKFS? And so it really gives somebody an opportunity to talk about what they've experienced and what they do now and why they put that out there.
Yeah.
And so it's not only a good reminder when you see it daily yourself, but it's a good reminder that when you're showing or sharing that with somebody and how that'll impact them. And then maybe they would pick it up like I picked it up with the deer dick and said, did you really do everything kind? And I'm like, man, that's a good motto to just have,
Yeah.
you know? Maybe you'll take that extra 5-10 seconds and hold the door for somebody, maybe you'll see something, and you just pick that up and, put it in the garbage can,
Yeah.
or maybe you see somebody that's struggling on something. You're like, man, I just need to give them a call, or I
Yeah.
need to just, go. I haven't spent time with them and I know they got some stuff going on. Maybe I'll just drop by, any of those little things. And it's like, it doesn't have to cost money. It doesn't have to, cost a whole lot of time, but it's just, you know, do something kind for
Mm-hmm.
someone. There's opportunities that present themselves every day to everybody.
Yeah.
And you'll know it because you'll start thinking about it, and then somebody will say, what is that again? You're like, oh, it's DSKFS, do something kind for someone. oh, that's really cool. That's really, where do I get that? Oh, you got to win it, or you got to
Right.
be a channel member. This guy, Zach, he's wild and crazy. He loves his Benchmades, but, he's got this, hashtag that he came up with. And then how it spreads is really cool as well. I don't have trademark on it. I don't have licensing on it. That's not the intent of it whatsoever. But the biggest thing is like I don't want people to make money off of it. So
Right.
if somebody contacts me like yourself and is like, "Hey, I have this cool thing that I want to put out and I want to incorporate DSKFS because one, you know what it means, and two, people are going to ask what it means, and three, most likely, most of the people that receive that are going to know what it means. And to me, that's pretty cool. So,
Yeah.
so there's been a few people, and on every occasion, I'm like, hey, as long as you're not making money off of it, that's my intention. Like,
Yeah.
I sold these to try to cover costs when I originally first got them, and maybe only sold, a couple dozen of them, and it didn't cover the cost of the order. So at that point, I
No.
was like, how do I, because you spend, $600-700 for the first order, and you're like, how do
Yeah.
I cover the cost for this? Like, well, I need to at least sell this many, and the cost
Yeah.
of the patches, a couple bucks a piece, and you're like, okay, and then you got to ship it, and like, okay, and I don't want to get into a business thing, so I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, if I can, the people that support my channel and watch my videos and my members, their support really pays for that stuff behind the scenes. And that's the cool part is they probably don't know this, and I probably don't tell them enough, but I try to just let people know, like, your support really goes to run this channel. And when I order the swag and I order the patches and the other stuff, like, that's why when I get new members, I try to send them out some swag, like, hey,
Yeah.
thanks for your support. And even if it's somebody that donates a membership to them, it's just they're giving that gift of kindness to that other person through the membership. And, the intent is obviously if they continue to support the channel, that's terrific. It goes to buy more stuff that I can give away.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm just kind of cool that it's really taken hold in the community, and there's so many people that know about it, which is really awesome. And I've had some pretty influential people that have been like, I really like that. That's really cool what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And they've mentioned it, on some of their videos and other stuff. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. And then I see like other people talking about it, and somebody will win something and give it to somebody else. And they're like, man, hashtag DSKFS. That's awesome. And you kind of see how that kind of just spreads and flows through the community.
It really
And
has. It kind of
yeah,
spreads like wildfire at times, So
and it creates a culture,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and people respect that. Not that it's a requirement, but just my intention is that people just put that into their daily thinker,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe it's one of those like, I'm having a bad day and I'm like, ah, blah, blah, but then all of a sudden an opportunity pops up and it's like, man, I could help somebody really quick with this. And how awesome is that? And it's
Yeah.
like,
Absolutely.
actually, let me help you with that. Let me get this, taken care of and get it all done. And then it's like, you've just kind of created that kindness through what you've done to help them out. And then all of a sudden now it's like, you've forgotten about the stuff that you were thinking about that was having a bad day for you, and you're like, it's kind of a cool thing to help them out. Like actually glad I took a couple minutes to do that. And overall, you wake up the next day and you're like, okay, it's on my bag or it's on my water bottle. It's a reminder for you. Like, let's do it
Yeah.
again today. Let's take that
Yeah.
opportunity. And you don't have to be like, it's not to be like a pushover. You got to help everybody out. It's like, no, it's just think about it. And it takes me back to the root of, did you really do everything kind? Damn, I didn't. I missed out on that opportunity. I should have done that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that's what got me, and that's kind of the root of where it came from. And I wanted to create something like that and really help spread it through our community. And it's kind of spread outside the community a little bit too, which is kind of
Yeah.
cool.
Well, I've personally seen it spread outside the community, and it took me a while to get my hands on the first one, and I actually reached out to you. I don't know if you remembered. It was shortly after I'd kind of gotten into the lives and stuff, and quite honestly, for a long time, didn't know what it meant. I just kept seeing it. I know it was
Oh
around.
yeah,
I know it had been around before I kind of started to come around. And once I finally found out what it meant, I remember sending you an email. Hey, can I buy some of those?
Yeah.
I want some of those patches. How much do you sell them for? And I think he says, I don't sell them. You got to win them. I was one of those guys, right? That you got to win. And it took me a minute. And I think if I remember right, it was, I think it was after I became a member. And I think that's one of the reasons that, they're like, ooh, swag pack. If you get a swag pack when you subscribe to the channel, maybe one of those will be in there. And I think that's how I got my first one. But the jacket I wore has a Velcro or hook and loop kind of deal on one of the sleeves, And I started wearing that in the winter when I'm wearing that jacket. And I'll have customers and people at the store. What is that? What is that? What is that DS? And you tell them, and I've gotten all kinds of response. Almost always is it positive,
Yeah.
But I mean, I can tell you what, if you want to find somebody that really needs some hashtag DSKFS in their life, it's a person that asks you what it means and says, well, I don't have time for any DSKFS. It's like, well, here, let me show you some because you need some right now.
Yeah.
Let me give you a hug or let me open the door or whatever. Because it's not really about, you don't have to, it's not about doing big stuff. It can just be simple as just smiling at somebody and seeing them smile back when they're having a bad day, and knowing that for that brief moment that you helped somebody feel better, that you did something nice for them, and sometimes those are the more important things that I see from it, not necessarily the gifts that you give people or the material things.
Right.
Yeah. So, but I've always been fascinated by it since I learned out what it was. So,
yeah, and it's an
a powerful
interesting
thing.
one. Yeah, I mean, I've had, I think when I first started incorporating it, people, they would ask about it because they would see it on a video or they'd see it on a post, and they're like, "What's DSKFS?"
Yeah.
And there's been some funny people in the chats. We love our comedians. They keep me laughing. But they've come up with alternative meanings, which has been awesome.
Yes. Yeah.
But
Well, and I kind of had a little bit of fun with it too. And I don't know if you know where I'm going with this, but I reached out to you here last year or so and asked you if I could actually use it on something. And when we did the coin for the business,
yep.
And it was somehow, some way, I wanted this on this coin because the people I was going to be handing these out to in the business world, trust me, there's some of those people I deal with that need to understand that. But we kind of hit it a little bit, obviously. But we had to have a little fun with it. It's like, do something, it's like, okay, Squatch, pull your shorts up. Start by doing something kind for yourself.
Yeah, and
But,
it's kind of cool.
yeah.
I like how you guys incorporated that. I think that was awesome the way you did it as well. I like the super squatch idea. I like the squatch idea as well. The marketing stuff you guys have, the graphics on that are a 10. And when you showed me, I think one of the first renderings, whatever, I was like, man, that killed it, dude. That was so awesome. And it kind of incorporates that bit of humor as well.
Yeah.
But then it's also going to get people asking that.
Yeah.
Which is kind of the cool part about it, because if they don't know, they're going to look at everything on that coin and go, oh, I understand, this is great. Man, great idea on that. They're going to flip it over and they're going to go, that's funny. And then they're going to go, what's that?
Exactly.
Oh, it's do something kind for someone. And like you said, the majority of people are going to go like, man, that's perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially when you're all stressed out and you're having one of those days and so you hit somebody with it and like, you can just kind of see them go, oh, it's like you just gave them permission to just relax a little bit and say, life doesn't have to be this complicated right now. How long ago did that happen? Like I say, I know it's been around for at least 2.5, 3 years that I know of, or thereabouts. I'm assuming it's been around a minute longer than that at least, or.
Yeah, I'd have to look back. I haven't put a time on when I put it out there.
Right.
I think I started putting the hashtag in some chats, mentioning it on some of my videos before I even had like stickers or things like that. Mm-hmm. And the cool parts is like the sticker idea was really cool to have. It's a holographic sticker, has the DSKFS on it, and really getting into that with people and showing them like what it is and telling them what it is, and then it kind of stuck, and then I'm like, okay, I need to create a patch. I like this. I want to do more of a Ranger Eye style, but it wasn't big enough for me. So it's kind of like an extended Ranger Eye.
Yeah.
It goes out a little bit.
Uh-huh.
So when you look at it, it's like, okay, it's almost as tall as the Ranger Eye, but then I wanted it to really be bold so people could see it.
Yeah.
If they put it on a jacket, put it on a bag, or something like that. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so
Yeah.
I would say probably 4 years,
Okay.
3 or 4 years it's
Yeah.
been out there.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting. Probably not a better time, because I mean, as we were
Hmm.
all dealing with COVID and been lockdowns and unlocking and all that stuff like that. I mean, what a messed up world it got to be there for a
Yeah,
while,
and I would say in it. Well,
and to
yeah,
have that kind of a sentiment out there, and I think that's one of the reasons that I gravitated to so much. I discovered it, right in the middle of all that. I was
yeah,
like, yeah, and I think that's why it hit home so much. As like, the world really does need to pay attention to this a little bit and just quit being so selfish and do something nice for somebody else. So, but yeah,
yep.
it's awesome. I love it, man. So love it, love it, love it. So, well, we've been rolling at this a while, my man. You getting worn out? You got anything else that you want to throw out there as far as the Zach stuff story, or at least for this edition of it, anyways?
No other super secret questions, huh?
Nothing. No,
Nothing crazy.
I didn't want to get in too much trouble with this tonight, so we can save that one. I have a goal of doing this around a campfire one of these days, and doing some campfire chats. And it's been a minute since we've got together. We need to go find a campfire. Maybe we can get into some more of that kind of stuff around a campfire, and maybe turn a camera on, and yeah, maybe that'll be a late night edition release or something like that.
Yeah, I think that would be a fun one. I think it'd be fun to also just get a bunch of people together and do like a camping meetup.
Absolutely.
Because the meetups are great. As you know, we talked about it here on this even, but it's like how cool would it be to just spend the next like 2 days with everyone that was there,
Right. Right. Yeah.
and really get into just spending time with people and really finding out not just like, hey, let's look at the knives real quick. Oh gosh, I got to get back on the road because I got a
Yeah.
4 hour trip ahead of me to head back home. But really be able to kind of get into some stories, and we hear a
Absolutely.
lot of those on the live streams, depending on whose live stream you jump into, and those are the times like the community. That's where it's so awesome
Absolutely.
to be part of the community because you hear those funny stories and you're like, oh my gosh, and you're like, oh, I remember when this happened, and this is what happened to me, and people are like, oh, good golly, like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
like learn something new about somebody,
Yeah.
um, so that would be really fun to plan out, and I really encourage people. I know some people on the East Coast and also in kind of the middle of the country have done a few knife meetups with their local people as well,
Yeah.
and had some fun with it. So I would just encourage people, if you're not local here in the Pacific Northwest, find some people in the community. Do some social media posts, get into a group chat with some of those people and then plan something, and
Absolutely.
even if I've seen some that people are kind of isolated a little bit and they've had like just 3 or 4 people show up and they go have breakfast or they go just grab coffee together, and
Yeah.
it's kind of cool the ones that I've seen where people are doing like a monthly meetup you
That
know
would be fun, where you kind of have a regular, even a revolving location if you need to move it
yeah,
geographically or something like that. I mean, you and I have been trying to get some follow up Pacific Northwest meetups put together, and have, well, quite honestly, we've failed on some of the attempts, not because some effort hasn't been put into them. Getting, especially when you're trying to get some place to host it, and getting schedules and everybody to agree on dates, and
we
everything
won't
coming
say
together.
who.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm just kidding.
well, I mean, sometimes their hands are tied, right? I mean, it's not necessarily that people don't necessarily want to, but
Yeah,
just trying to coordinate the stuff that's going on with their businesses or their locations, and then trying to get everybody on the same page. But Yeah, I mean, and quite honestly, it doesn't have to be at a knife store. It doesn't have to be at a knife manufacturer. It doesn't have to be at an EDC equipment manufacturer. You can literally just meet up in a parking lot.
Hmm.
And who was this?
Well,
Stevie and those guys. I think recently they've been
mhm.
talking more about their group that they've been getting together. And I don't know if it's been weekly or monthly or whatever, but I know I saw something here and not too long ago where they just had another person kind of join their little
Hmm.
breakfast or dinner group or whatever it was for the first time,
Yeah.
and we're having a good
And
time with it.
also, did you see the recent live stream he had where they were in a cemetery at night because he was on the road traveling?
I caught part of it and I started to watch it, and then life interrupted. And by the time I came back, I got back right as they were shutting it down. And I haven't had a
That
chance to go
was
back and rewatch it, but it was like I want to see what happened because I saw the beginning of it.
well, and it was funny too because the title was like, "Hey, we're doing a cemetery with this person, this person, this person." I'm like, "Wait a second, how is he hooking up with Grateful Panic? Like they don't live by each other." And then it's like, oh, he's traveling, and so he just reached out to those guys and was like, "Hey, I'm gonna be in the area. Like, do you guys want to meet up and do this?" And I'm like,
Yeah,
that is super cool. So that's something
yeah.
that I get into too of like, hey, I'm gonna head up to Washington. Like, who's out here in Washington that wants to meet up or do something fun like that? Like those antics are kind of fun.
Yeah.
And whether it's whether they play good on camera or not, that was a pretty funny live stream. But just the time around people is the community based stuff as well, which is awesome.
It really is, and not that you can't have a good relationship with the people online without it, but
Yeah.
I mean, I think we probably both agree that putting faces with names and interacting and getting those opportunities, it just takes it to a whole different level, and I just it's been rewarding. It's just been a few weeks I've been doing this. You've been doing a lot longer than that, but just the support from the community, that's been coming back in. I know you've experienced it and had a lot of it for a while, but it's just neat, and you just don't usually see guys primarily. I mean, we got some ladies out there too, but you don't see guys come together usually and play this nice in the sandbox. There's
Right.
some good humans out here, and this is a neat
Hmm.
community, and I thank you very much for coming and sharing your story
Yeah.
of
Thanks
the
for giving me
Zach
an
Stuff
opportunity
channel.
to chat
And
with you. And your setup is way inspiring for when I want to do like a face forward
yeah,
scenario. So
yeah,
I know there'll be a lot more talks about that in the future because I'll have to upgrade some cameras and some lighting and get rid of posters on the wall and you know.
yeah. Well, I still got a pretty good mess going in here, and finally, my cardboard blinds that you can't see over here. The blinds for the window finally got delivered today, so I don't
Oh,
have to
nice,
I don't
nice.
have to worry about the cardboard falling over on me in the middle of the live like it almost did the other night. And I'm like, oh,
That's
don't no,
funny.
don't come down right now.
Yeah.
But it's the only way to get the streetlights and stuff out of here when you go live, right? So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
no, it's been fun. I was fortunate enough that I already had the camera background and the photography background and all that stuff. So
Your
that was
photos are
that.
amazing.
Well, thank you. That was the easy part. Trying to figure out how to use it all and get live, as you well know. You were so patient with me. I do appreciate all your help and support with that. But
Of course.
I sure hope that like we talked about initially, I was trying to get this thing going, and the main reason for wanting to do this, get to know you better, and let other people in the community get to know you better. They maybe know you for 6 months, a year, 2 years, but how many people don't know that front end of that story, right? And
Right.
I hope more people want to sit down and do this. Hopefully we did all right with this, and we didn't scare a whole lot of people off. But I've sure had a good time doing it, and look forward to doing some more of this stuff with you, and maybe getting some other guys on here screwing around with us, and just having a good knife community, EDC community chat every once in a while. So,
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it.
you know, it would be awesome, my man. Awesome. Well, I sure appreciate you, Mr. Zach, and it's kind of that time of the video. Everybody get out there, Zach Stuff on YouTube. Get over there, light him up. If you're not subscribed and you happen to see this, I don't know how that's possible. If you're seeing my video and you don't know who Zach Stuff is, subscribe, but get over there, subscribe to his channel. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please do the same. Hit the notification bells on both of them. We both want you to come back. And if we didn't screw this up too bad, hit that like button on the way out after you get done watching this, folks. But my friend, Mr. Zach, thank you very much. I've kept you for a long time. Hopefully you're not too angry at me in the morning, but I appreciate every minute of it. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh man,
Appreciate
it's been
you.
great.
So
yeah, thank you as well. And also, you know, if you're here and you've watched this far through this whole video, leave a comment, put hashtag
Absolutely.
DSKFS in there.
Yeah. Hashtag DSKFS. You betcha, light it up, share it, and try to make somebody smile tomorrow. You know? Yeah. I love it. Thank you so much, Mr. DSKFS. Zach Stuff. We will see you guys next time on the Pocket Razors channel. We'll get this conversation moving forward. Thank you, sir. Take care.
See you
Peace
later.
out.